You ever wonder what it truly takes to build something from nothing? Not just a business, but a legacy, a testament to pure, unadulterated grit. That's the story of Elias Vance, a name you might not have known a few months ago, but one that's now etched into the very fabric of American enterprise. Elias wasn't born into privilege. Forget silver spoons. He grew up in Maplewood Heights, a neighborhood where opportunity felt more like a whispered myth than a tangible reality. Picture it, cracked sidewalks, struggling public schools, and the constant hum of a community fighting for every inch. Raised by a single guardian, Elias learned early that if he wanted anything, he had to build it himself. Every late-night study session, every ramen noodle dinner, every discarded textbook scavenged from a dumpster, these weren't just moments. They were the invisible bricks in a dream he was meticulously laying. He didn't have connections or a fancy Ivy League pedigree. What he had was an almost stubborn belief in the power of ingenuity and a relentless drive to solve real problems. And solve problems he did. 2 decades of relentless work, of hammering away at complex equations and daring innovations, led to the birth of Vanguard Innovations. This wasn't some flashy startup fueled by venture capital hype. Vanguard was built on substance, on an unwavering commitment to sustainable technology. Their focus? Advanced renewable energy solutions that promise to revolutionize how we power our world. For years, they toiled in relative obscurity, their breakthroughs quietly changing landscapes, one solar farm, one wind turbine at a time. Elias often told his team, "We don't chase headlines, we chase impact." Then came the moment that changed everything, the email. It arrived like a jolt of lightning, not from a small-time local news outlet, but from the Daily Pulse, one of the most prestigious national talk shows in the country. They wanted Elias Vance, CEO of Vanguard Innovations, as a guest on their upcoming segment about new frontiers in business. Elias had seen this play before. A mainstream platform suddenly remembering that innovators like him existed, trotting them out for a few minutes of applause before moving on to the next trending topic. But this was different. Vanguard wasn't some upstart anymore. They had just secured a monumental multi-billion-dollar clean energy contract, outbidding some of the biggest names in the industry. This wasn't luck. This was the culmination of 2 decades of relentless, often thankless work. Still, he hesitated before accepting. Something felt off. His assistant Maya picked up on his hesitation immediately. "You sure you want to do this, Elias? You know how these shows are. They love a success story, but they love tearing one down even more." Elias leaned back in his chair, a slow smile playing on his lips. "I'll handle it. Besides, it's national exposure. Let's see what they have to say." Maya exhaled, shaking her head. "Just don't let them bait you." He nodded, though deep down he knew the game. If this interview was a setup, they were playing chess with the wrong man. The morning of the interview, Elias arrived at the gleaming KTN studios in Los Angeles. The air in the green room was cool, sterile. A young producer greeted him, barely looking up from her clipboard. "Mr. Vance, thanks for being here. We'll mic you up in 5. No small talk, no warm-up, just in and out like a transaction." As he sat in the makeup chair, an assistant powdered his face with practiced indifference. The monitor on the wall showed the live broadcast of the show, a panel segment on celebrity scandals, followed by a cooking demo, then a transition card. Coming up next, the green tech boom. Is it innovation or affirmative action? Elias felt a cold clench in his gut. So this was the angle. This was the new frontier. Not innovation, but interrogation. Not celebration, but suspicion. But if they thought they had the upper hand, they were in for a surprise. He just didn't realize how far they were willing to go, or that this seemingly routine interview was about to become a battleground. A live broadcast that would send shockwaves across the nation and fundamentally redefine what it means to truly succeed. The stage was set, the cameras were rolling, and Elias Vance was about to face not just a seasoned journalist, but the weight of generations of unspoken assumptions. The fight had just begun. The set of the Daily Pulse was designed to look inviting, soft blues and golds, a gleaming glass coffee table separating the host chair from the guests. Cameras hovered like silent observers, capturing every movement, every flicker of expression. Elias adjusted his suit jacket, taking his seat across from Victoria Sterling, the show's lead anchor. She was a seasoned journalist with a reputation for asking tough questions, her smile polished, but it didn't quite reach her eye. Elias Vance, she began, her voice smooth, practiced. CEO of Vanguard Innovations, a true American success story. Elias gave a polite nod. Appreciate you having me. She leaned in slightly, flipping through her cue cards. Now let's get right into it. Your company recently landed a multi-billion-dollar government contract, beating out some of the biggest names in green tech. That's impressive. Elias knew this game. Build him up first, make it seem like they respected his achievements. It was a classic tactic designed to disarm, to create a false sense of rapport before the real questions began to sting. He gave a measured response. It was a long process, but yeah, we put in the work. We developed a proprietary renewable energy system that simply outperforms our competitors. Simple as that. Victoria crossed her legs, her expression unreadable. Some have called it groundbreaking. She paused ever so subtly. But others have raised questions. Elias didn't flinch. Questions. She picked up a card, reading aloud. Some industry experts say Vanguard benefited from certain federal sustainability incentives. That companies like yours have an edge in these contracts because agencies are looking to diversify their vendors. That perhaps this wasn't just about being the best, but about meeting a quota. There it was, the trap laid bare, the real reason he was here. Elias let a beat pass, letting the implication hang in the air, the unspoken accusation. I've heard that argument before, he finally responded, his voice calm but with an underlying steel. It's funny, though, when an entrepreneur from Maplewood Heights wins, it's special treatment. But when a legacy firm run by the same families for generations lands those same deals, nobody questions it. The air in the studio shifted. Producers off camera glanced at each other. Victoria held her ground. So, you're saying race played no role at all in your success? Elias chuckled, shaking his head. Let me ask you this, Victoria. When SpaceX won its NASA contracts, was it because Elon Musk met a diversity quota? When Jeff Bezos landed government deals for Blue Origin, was it because of his background? Or do we only ask that question when the CEO looks like me? Victoria's expression barely flickered. So, you don't believe these diversity programs help? Elias folded his hands. They help level the playing field, but what people don't realize is the playing field was never level to begin with. But Victoria wasn't done yet. She had something else up her sleeve. Her smile sharpened like a blade hidden in silk. She glanced at her cue cards, then back at Elias. Well, Elias, let's talk about that playing field you mentioned, she said, her tone shifting from polite curiosity to something colder, more probing. You grew up in Maplewood Heights, single guardian, public school, worked your way up from nothing. That's inspiring. Elias gave a slow nod, sensing exactly where this was going. Victoria continued, the implication clear, a subtle jab aimed at undermining his self-made narrative. But here's what some might wonder. How does someone with no Ivy League background, no deep family connections, go from a struggling neighborhood to securing contracts that billion-dollar corporations fail to land? She let the question hang in the air. How did you get here? Did someone pull strings? Elias tilted his head slightly, as if considering his words carefully, but his resolve was ironclad. It's called work, Victoria. Some of us don't have generational wealth or country club networks to fall back on, so we build from the ground up. Victoria gave a small nod, like she was hearing him, but he knew she wasn't truly listening. But surely you had help along the way, she pressed. Maybe a mentor, a program, something that gave you an extra push. Elias exhaled quietly. Yeah, help came in the form of working 3 jobs while getting my engineering degree. Help came in the form of sleeping in my office while I built my first software prototype because I couldn't afford rent. That's the help I got. Her lips pressed together for a fraction of a second. The producers standing behind the cameras were locked in now, sensing the shift in the dynamic. Victoria shuffled her cue cards again, going for the direct approach. And yet, some would argue that entrepreneurs like you today have more opportunities than ever before. That programs like affirmative action, minority business grants, and government incentives exist specifically to open doors that weren't open decades ago. Elias leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. "You know what's funny?" he began, his voice gaining a quiet intensity that commanded attention. "When an entrepreneur like me succeeds, people always ask what programs helped us. But nobody asks which old money bank helped fund a white-owned startup. Nobody asks which family connections got them into Stanford, or which golf buddy invested in their company." He let that sink in for a second before continuing. "The truth is, success isn't handed out in some lottery. People like me had to be twice as good just to get a seat at the table." A noticeable shift swept through the room, the quiet tension of an audience realizing they were watching something raw, something real unfold. The trap was sprung, but Elias wasn't caught. In fact, he was just getting started. The bait was taken, but the hook was his to wield, and the next few minutes would prove just how unprepared Victoria Sterling was for the counterpunch that was about to land. Victoria, however, didn't blink. Instead, she smiled the way a chess player smiles when they think they've just cornered their opponent. "That's an interesting perspective," she said, her voice smooth as glass. "But let's address another factor. Perception." She turned slightly toward the cameras. "Elias, you present yourself as a self-made success, but let's talk about the public perception of your story. Some say that entrepreneurs of color get an unfair advantage when it comes to media attention, that the narrative of overcoming struggle is more marketable than the thousands of equally hardworking white business owners who don't get the same headlines." Elias let out a quiet chuckle. "Oh, so now we get too much attention?" Victoria kept her polished smile, but a slight shift in her posture gave her away. She wasn't expecting him to laugh. "I'm just pointing out that in today's climate, some people feel there's pressure to highlight diversity over pure merit." Elias exhaled, shaking his head. "Merit, right?" He glanced briefly at the cameras, then back at her. "Let me ask you something, Victoria. Do you really think that if I wasn't exceptional at what I do, I'd be sitting in this chair right now?" Her lips parted slightly, but before she could respond, he kept going. "You think I got here because I played the diversity card, or do you think I got here despite everything designed to keep me out?" The silence in the room was louder than any of her previous questions. It wasn't just a pause, it was a pregnant silence, charged with the weight of unspoken truths. This was a moment where the script had been thrown out the window, and raw honesty was now on the stage. You see, this is where the myth of meritocracy truly unravels. We're told that if you work hard enough, you'll succeed, and yes, hard work is essential. Elias embodied it. But what if the starting line isn't the same for everyone? What if some people are running uphill barefoot while others glide on a paved track with the wind at their backs? That's the hypocrisy Elias was stripping bare. It wasn't about denying opportunities. It was about exposing the illusion of equal opportunity when the system itself is skewed. Victoria, however, wasn't done. Not yet, because she had one last card to play, the one designed to break him, the one that in her mind would put him firmly back in his place. But what she didn't realize was that Elias Vance wasn't interested in playing by her rules anymore. He was rewriting them live on national television, and the next few moments would ensure that no one watching would ever forget it. Victoria's smile, though still plastered on, now looked strained. She was losing control of the narrative, a cardinal sin for a seasoned host. She tried one last desperate maneuver, a common tactic used to dismiss inconvenient truths. "Elias," she began, her voice dripping with feigned concern, "do you think some of this outrage is exaggerated? After all, your success story proves the system isn't as stacked against minorities as some claim. You're here, on national television, leading a multi-billion-dollar company. Doesn't that show the system is working?" This was the ultimate bait, the one designed to make him seem ungrateful, to use his singular triumph as proof that the systemic issues others faced were merely a matter of not working hard enough. It's a dangerous fallacy, isn't it? The idea that one person's escape from a burning building means the fire wasn't that bad for everyone else trapped inside. Elias leaned forward, his gaze piercing, unwavering. The polite veneer was gone, replaced by a raw, unyielding truth. "You know what's funny?" he began, his voice low but cutting through the studio's engineered calm. "People love to use one success story as proof that a problem doesn't exist." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle before delivering the knockout blow. "If one person climbs out of a burning building, do you point at him and say, 'See, the fire wasn't that bad'?" The silence that followed was deafening. You could almost hear the gears turning in the control room, the sudden panic. Victoria's eyes flickered, her carefully constructed composure finally cracking. "The fact that I made it," Elias continued, his voice rising slightly, "doesn't mean the system isn't broken. It just means I fought twice as hard to get through it." Victoria, clearly flustered, tried to regain control, to deflect. "But isn't this really just about resentment towards larger corporations rather than race? Is it possible your frustration isn't really about that?" Elias almost chuckled, a dry, bitter sound. "Resentment? No. Accountability? Absolutely." He looked directly into the main camera, his eyes holding the gaze of millions. "I say that people love to believe in fairy tales when they're the ones benefiting from them. Let me give you some real numbers, Victoria. Black entrepreneurs are still twice as likely to be denied loans than their white counterparts, even with the same credit. Less than 2% of venture capital funding goes to black-owned businesses. And yet, we're told the playing field is suddenly level." He leaned back, a resigned, almost weary expression crossing his face. "Let's stop pretending the system isn't rigged. It is. And the only people who don't see it are the ones it works for. The ones who never had to prove their worth before they even walked through the door." Then Elias delivered the final, undeniable truth, the revelation that shattered any remaining illusion of fairness. His voice was no longer just calm, it was imbued with the quiet power of undeniable fact. "You know what the real problem is?" he asked, not to Victoria, but to the millions watching. "The bar isn't in the same place for everyone." He paused, letting his words hang in the air, allowing the audience to truly grasp their meaning. A mediocre white man can fail upwards in this country, get severance packages from failed companies, get hired at the next big firm, but a brilliant black man has to jump through flaming hoops just to get a shot, and even then, he's constantly questioned. The bitterness was palpable. A white CEO can run a company into the ground, bankrupt it, lay off thousands, and somehow get hired somewhere else next month. Meanwhile, a black CEO has one bad quarter, one misstep, and suddenly it's proof that we weren't ready for leadership in the first place. His eyes, now blazing with a righteous fire, locked back onto Victoria. "And the best part? When we actually make it, when we defy every single odd, people like you sit across from us and ask if we got here because of some special advantage?" He scoffed, a short, sharp sound. "You wanted to talk about fairness? Then let's start by telling the truth." The studio was absolutely silent. The crew, the producers, even Victoria herself seemed momentarily frozen. Elias then did something unexpected. He looked past Victoria directly into the camera, addressing the audience at home. "I know what some of you are thinking right now. Some of you are nodding because you've seen this, you've lived this is your story too. And some of you are sitting there frowning, arms crossed, telling yourselves, this isn't real, that I'm just playing the victim. But deep down," he said, his voice dropping to a powerful whisper, "you know I'm right." Just then, a voice crackled in Elias's earpiece. "We're going to commercial in 3, 2, 1. The screen abruptly cut to a cheerful advertisement for a new laundry detergent, but the damage was done. The illusion of a broken system that just needed a little fixing had been irrevocably shattered. What would happen next? The game had changed, and Elias Vance was now the one holding all the cards. The screen cut to black, then back to a cheerful commercial, but the damage was done. The studio audience buzzed, a cacophony of gasps, whispers, and a few defiant claps. Victoria Sterling sat frozen, her polished smile finally gone, replaced by a look of bewildered shock. Elias Vance, meanwhile, simply unclipped his mic, a quiet, almost imperceptible sigh escaping him. He had spoken his truth, and the world was about to catch fire. Fire it did. The clip of Elias's interview didn't just go viral, it exploded. Within hours, it was everywhere. Social media feeds were ablaze, a furious, passionate debate erupting in real time. Elias Vance just exposed the media's bias, one tweet screamed, garnering millions of likes. Finally, someone said it, another echoed, but the backlash was equally swift and venomous. Here we go again, another success story playing the victim card. He's just bitter. The comment sections were a battleground, reflecting the deep, often uncomfortable, fault lines within society. Cable news channels, desperate for content, seized on the controversy. Pundits debated corporate entitlement versus a reckoning for meritocracy. Victoria Sterling, in a damage control interview, stubbornly defended her journalistic integrity, insisting she was merely asking tough but fair questions. But the truth, unvarnished truth, Elias had laid bare, was out. For Vanguard Innovations, the impact was immediate and jarring. The phone rang off the hook. Ironically, many of the calls were from investors who had previously ignored Elias's pitches, now suddenly interested in diversifying their portfolios. The irony wasn't lost on Elias. But alongside the new opportunities came the chilling reality of hate, emails filled with racial slurs, anonymous threats against his family, and perhaps most painfully, the quiet withdrawal of a few long-standing partners who suddenly found Vanguard's new public image too controversial. The cost of speaking truth was real, and it was personal. One quiet afternoon, a week after the interview, his assistant, Maya, walked into his office. Her expression was unreadable, a folder clutched in her hand. "We just got an offer," she said, her voice a little breathless. Elias raised an eyebrow. "From who?" She set the folder on his desk. It was from a major network, not the Daily Pulse. They wanted him to do a televised special, a one-on-one deep dive into race, business, and the systemic barriers that Elias had so eloquently articulated. Elias leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. "So now they want to listen," he mused, a dry smile playing on his lips. Maya smirked back. "Seems like it." After a beat, she asked, "What do you want to do?" He could walk away, let the noise die down, get back to the quiet, focused work of building Vanguard, retreat from the spotlight that had become a double-edged sword. Or he could use this moment, not for clout, not for fleeting attention, but to say the things nobody truly wanted to hear, to force the uncomfortable conversations. He picked up the folder, flipping through the glossy proposal. He saw the potential, the chance to turn a viral moment into a lasting movement. Then he set it down. He looked at Maya, his eyes holding a new, steely resolve. "Tell him I'll do it?" Maya's eyes widened slightly. "You sure?" He nodded, a firm, decisive motion. "Yeah, but on my terms." Because if the system was going to put him under a spotlight, he was damn sure going to control the narrative. Elias Vance's viral moment wasn't just another internet controversy. It was a reckoning. It forced a conversation people had been dodging for decades, about race, about success, about who gets to rise without question and who gets questioned when they rise. Some called him an activist, some called him arrogant, but one thing was certain, nobody could ignore him anymore. So what do you think? Does success mean playing by the rules of a broken system? Or does it mean rewriting the rules entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe more stories like this need to be told, if you believe in the power of truth to ignite change, then subscribe to our channel. Because just like Elias Vance, we're here to challenge the status quo, one story at a time.